Hello all. Welcome back to the second session, second part of the JavaScript object-oriented programming series. In this part we are going to discuss about the base object that forms the basic building block of JavaScript object. Objects are the basic building blocks of JavaScript object-oriented programming. You can consider it as a combination of a map and a normal a normal object-oriented programming object. Now, what I mean by that is you have features inherited from the map, part 1. And part 2 will be you also have the features inherited from the objects from the traditional object-oriented programming techniques. So let's see them through an example. Basically, objects are nothing but key value pairs. It is a sequence of keys which can be associated with a various set of values of ranging from primitive data types to non-primitive data types. So let's verify it through an example. In this small example that is there, so the object that we have instantiated in this case is having two properties. Is containing two properties. So the two properties both are key value pairs. One is value and the another one is the display message. The value is pointing to an integer, whereas the display message is pointing to an object of type function. So basically, any object taken in JavaScript, it's a key value pair. Now the features inherited from the map or the traditional objects from the object-oriented programming techniques are that you will observe that in map you can add and delete properties during runtime, whereas the same is not applicable in an object from the object-oriented programming language. What I mean by that is you have this value and display message. It is just not these two properties that this object is confined of. You can create a new property of that object during runtime. That is basically adding a new property into the object. So let us add a property called sample. Let's verify it. This contains the sample value. So until this point, that is before sample was initialized, it will give you a value of undefined, which means that the property itself doesn't exist in the object. Whereas after defining it, you will have the value, which means to say that unlike the traditional way of implementing classes bar objects in the object-oriented programming techniques, in JavaScript or in scripts, basically you can keep on adding and deleting properties during runtime. And in this example we have seen how to add a new property. Now let us verify how to delete a property from an existing object. So in this case, there are objects. There is an object that is defined with two properties, again key value pairs, value and display message. And you will see that without, I'm commenting the delete statement, and without this, let us output the value of the same. You will get the value of 10. Now with delete, it gives you the value of undefined, which means to say that the value property of object has been deleted during runtime, which is also not the case with the traditional objects, which is also not the case with the traditional classes bar objects in the object-oriented programming techniques. So that's what these slides speak about. There are two ways that you can access properties of a JavaScript object, of an object defined in JavaScript. So they are you can alert the value property of the object defined above using object dot value, or this way. So in this case, both print 10. Now the advantage of the second way of accessing the property is that this allows you to have dynamism in the properties of the objects. So you need not know beforehand what is the property. This can be a dynamic parameter to it. These are the two ways of accessing properties of a JavaScript, of an object in JavaScript. So we can classify data types available in JavaScript into primitive and non-primitive data types. Primitive data types: undefined, null, boolean, string, number. Non-primitive data types: object, function, array, regular, expression. All these form as the non-primitive data types in JavaScript. So as explained previously, so in this non-primitive data types in JavaScript, we'll have a special talk on function. Functions are special kind of objects wherein as we go on discussing, they act as several roles in our JavaScript framework, either as a simple constructor, as a function, and many others. So just to understand the way functions work and the way the engines, the JavaScript engine in the browser instantiates a function object, whenever you define a function, automatically there is an object instantiated for you which contains of three properties. The name of the function, the object that is created once you define a function, the variable name of that object itself is the function name. So in this case, my function stands out to be the name of my variable, which points to a function object, which is nothing but this. So as and when the browser engine, the JavaScript engine in the browser, scans through this code, the first thing that it will do after encountering the lines 3, 4, 5 is it instantiates an object with the name my function, and it also populates three properties for that variable: the name, the length, and the prototype. The name is nothing but the name of the function, the length is nothing but the number of parameters, and prototype is nothing but the object that instantiated the function. So let's look at it one by one. This being the name of the function, 2, and the object that instantiated the function. So this happens to be a special property, a special object in JavaScript. And as we go on discussing through the JavaScript object-oriented techniques, we will identify that functions form the base of the JavaScript object-oriented programming. It allows you to instantiate objects in many different ways. So earlier we had discussed in the first part, the JavaScript is also called as the first class functions just because the functions can be passed and returned from other objects, from other functions. And this term was coined in by Christopher Strachey. So one last point to be discussed in the primitive and the non-primitive data types is that primitive data types are passed by value, whereas non-primitive data types are passed by reference. Very similar to Java, what Java does. So let's see an example of pass by value and pass by reference here. So in this case, I have a very simple example of pass by value for the primitive data types. My variable a is initialized to a simple string, and the value of the same is printed. And then I assign the same variable to b, and b I'm changing the value of b, and then I'm alerting back the value of a. Now I'm expecting that if it is passed by value, then a should not modify, though b's value has been changed. So that's what exactly happened. You don't get to see the value of a being modified across, though b's value was changed. Now that is the example that we just saw now was a simple assignment. Now this is something that will occur across the method calls. So in this example I have declared a to be 10. I'm alerting the value of it, and then I have a new function instantiated which modifies the passed parameters value to 20, and then I invoke the same function passing my variable a, and in this case after that I print a. As this is also a primitive data type, I don't expect any changes in the value of a during runtime. It started as 10 and it remained as 10. So these are the two examples for the pass by value examples concept. So now let us see pass by reference. Now in pass by reference we basically pass by reference occurs for objects, for custom objects. Those are non-primitive data types, and in this case in my third line I'll be declaring two objects, object 1 and object 2, and I instantiated object 1 to have a property of a. I assign object 2 to be object 1, and then after that I alerted the value of object 1's a properties. I should then get a value of 3.14159, and then I modify object 2's to a property of object 2 to 42, and now though object 2 was modified, it will impact object 1 also, because the values to the object 2 from object 1 was passed by reference. So when I alert it, I should now get a value of 42. That was a simple example of assigning a property. And in this example we will see pass by reference by passing the same object through a function. So in this case I have a object declared with a property of 10 value, and then I alert its value, and then I have a new function which modifies the pass parameters value attribute of the pass parameters object to 20. And then I invoke that function by passing the first object that I instantiated, and then I alert the value property of object. Now you would see that across the two alerts, the first alert should give me a value of 10 and the second one should give me a value of 20, as the value of the same was modified in the function through pass by reference. So in this slide we went through what it makes to create the basic building block of JavaScript object-oriented programming, the various data types of JavaScript, the non-primitive data types, the primitive data types, and the concepts associated with the pass by value, pass by reference. So in the next upcoming session we'll discuss the starting point towards object-oriented programming techniques. So thank you.